So I just want to like talk about like, you know, how we got separated to our closer ancestors, Neanderthals. And so we have coexisted them for a very long time, longer actually than the time they have been extinct. It's because like they've existed until 40,000 years ago.
Yep.
And then we had Homo erectus as well. And one by one, either we interbred with them or we killed them. And one of the reasons, like I was reading in Noah Harari's *Sapiens*, is that one of the reasons we actually probably survived is our ability to socialize better. Is that so?
It's one of the hypotheses, and I think there's some reasonable evidence for it. It's really hard to say anything definitively on that. There are people who will argue it quite vigorously. I think Neanderthal were tool users, they were social. There's evidence that they had ritual, which suggests they may have had some religious beliefs. They had funerary rituals. All of that is there. Why they survived, why they didn't survive, and why we did survive, we may simply have been faster breeders, right? More babies, because we can, fertility rate globally now appears to be on the decline, or at least slowing down, but for a very long time, humans could really produce babies. We were good at that. And we may not be as good as some other species. You know, you look at some big cats or any cats might produce 5, 6, 7 offspring in a litter. We don't tend to do that, but we can have babies every year and a half, 2 years, 3 years. We can certainly reproduce. Neanderthal may simply not have had that level of fertility.
Right.
That's one of the things.
And despite like they were stronger, they had bigger heads, thighs, and we were like sort of like at a disadvantage, and if it comes one to one.
Possibly. I mean, there's a guy I used to work with in Durham University, Rob Barton, who looked at this looks at this evolution of brain development and evolution of cognition. And one of the things he is at pains to kind of repeat is brain size is not a direct correlation with intelligence. Right? So it's also the brain architecture that we need to know. How is the brain structured? So our neocortex, we know, is actually very, very important for our social memory. Right? How do we organize our relationships? And Robin Dunbar has written at length, and I've been a bit critical of some of what he does, but fundamentally, he's doing something really interesting. He's looking at these particular parts of the brain and how that correlates to social formation, social grouping. And Rob Barton has sort of really, I think, done quite a bit to help us understand that the size of the brain by itself is not telling you very much. You need to know the architecture of the brain. And part of the problem with our fossil record of Neanderthals is there is no soft tissue there. So we don't know the architecture of the brain of Neanderthal. We know the cavity.
Bone structure.
We know the bone structure. We know how big the volume was. But we don't know, for example, we don't know the neocortex. We can compare neocortices across different primates today, and that tells us something. We can certainly look at animals that have really very primitive brains, like crows, incredibly intelligent, but tiny little brains. But crows can solve problems sort of in 20, 22, 23 steps to solve a problem. These corvids are incredible problem solvers, very, very intelligent, without the benefit of a huge brain. So there's an evolutionary trade-off for brain size and sort of brain efficiency. And what we've seen over the last 3,000 years is actually our brains are getting smaller. Right? So our brains are less big than anatomically modern humans of 3,000 years ago. That probably isn't. It probably doesn't mean that we are less intelligent. It probably means that, who knows what it means, but we clearly have figured out how to do some problem solving without the benefit of a big brain, and that's about specialization within the brain. So the brain architecture matters hugely, and that unfortunately we can't really know about Neanderthals based on the fossil record. We would need some other way of reconstructing that architecture of the brain in the absence of any remains of soft tissue, which they aren't there.